Well, hello everyone. I am back today to talk about a film that was released early in the year this year. And to be honest, I had no intention of watching this movie whatsoever. And for the first time ever, when there's a movie that I had no interest in watching, I got Instagram messages, I got YouTube comments, comments on TikTok, and people saying, Nate, when are you going to watch this movie? And I'm just like in my head, like, come on, guys, I really just don't have any desire to check this movie out. And you've obviously seen what movie I'm going to be discussing today and talking about this universe, the Sony Marvel universe. I have never watched a single movie in this new Sony universe. I've seen the Spider-Man movies that were released with Andrew Garfield that were attached to Sony, but like Venom and Morbius and all those, I haven't seen any of them because I just have no interest. I feel like Marvel and Marvel attached to Sony, with a few exceptions, are so creatively bankrupt now, and their movies don't feel like there's any passion involved. There doesn't feel like there's any heart there. Where you look at like James Gunn's Guardians of the Galaxy movies, which feel like actual movies, and you even like the newer Spider-Man movies I've enjoyed, even though they're flawed, I still like them. And obviously Across the Spider-Verse is its own thing. It's just absolutely incredible. But like as far as a majority of the new the superhero wave, I just don't care, because if I'm gonna watch something, I was a huge comic book nerd growing up. I read a ton of comics in my youth. Spider-Man was my favorite superhero. And when Marvel first released movies, I was thrilled. I was so excited. And they've just progressively gotten worse because they've become less about making quality films and more about how fast can we churn these out. And clearly from the audience reception and the reviews of a lot of the recent movies, there's an issue there. And so I was never going to watch this, but the amount of people who were like, Nate, your reviews are very level-headed. You always go into a movie saying like, hey, I'm gonna experience this and I'm gonna either like it or hate it, but I'm gonna see it for what it is. So I sat down and watched it, and today I'm going to talk about Madam Web. Madam Web is directed by S.J. Clarkson. Forced to confront revelations about her past, paramedic Cassandra Webb forges a relationship with three young women destined for powerful futures if they can all survive a deadly present. So, as I said, I had no intention of watching this movie initially if it wasn't for a lot of you out there asking me to watch this movie. And I mean, it's that bad. It's terrible. There's not really anything positive to say about this movie. But I think, there's been a lot of people who have crapped on this movie, and for good reason. I mean, it's absolutely terrible. You 100% have every right to crap on the movie and say that it's terrible. And I know Chris Stuckman released a review. I still haven't seen it, but I know a lot of people were saying that he refused to review the movie and was kind of talking about how it's really upsetting that production companies are doing this to filmmakers and getting them involved in these projects. And I think there's a lot of validity in what he's saying, because it's like I said at the beginning of this review, it doesn't feel like any of these movies are being made because people want to make them. It feels like they're being made because the production companies know it's what's popular. I mean, you think about the money that Across the Spider-Verse made, and like the Spider-Man name is very popular. And while Madam Web is not necessarily the first thing you think about when it comes to Spider-Man, it's a property that exists in the universe that they can make money out of. And that's exactly what this movie feels like. It feels like an absolute dumpster fire of a terrible script, horrible cinematography, terrible editing, horrible performances that was just thrown together, and that like the finished product doesn't even really feel like a movie. It just feels like a jumbled mess, to where 3/4 of the way into the movie I felt like I was forgetting things I saw 20 minutes ago because I didn't care all that much. And I'm going to try to break this movie down as much as I can for you today. So simply, at the beginning of the film, we're introduced to Cassandra Webb, played by Dakota Johnson. She is a paramedic, and early on in the film, she starts having these visions, and she can see things that happen in the future. Throughout all these different conversations she has, people are like, what's wrong with you? What's going on with you? She gets on the subway one day, and she's introduced to these three young women on the subway who she sees this man come on the subway and kill all of them. And she flashes back into the present. She immediately forces all of them to get off the subway, and they are all on the run from this man who is in a Spider-Man looking costume, coming after them to try to kill them because he has foreseen the future and they are going to kill him. And he is tied into Cassandra's past with her mother. And so the entire film is Cassandra trying to keep these girls safe from this man and figure out what he wants from them. So as I said, this movie is an absolute garbage heap. It is terrible. In the first 5 minutes, the ADR of the film, which is when you record dialogue in a studio after the movie has already been recorded, and you play that over the person's mouth because the original dialogue didn't work or it was recorded poorly. And you can always tell when something's ADR'd. It's something about the inflection of the voice is not the same, and it's really obvious. But in this movie, the ADR doesn't even match up with the mouth. And I saw that in the first 5 minutes and was like, what in the hell is going on in this movie? And the performances were just so laughably bad. Like, it felt like something on the Hallmark Channel, but worse, just like people reading off of a piece of paper. And I was like, oh, we might be getting into like so bad it's good territory here, where there's going to be some moments that the dialogue delivery is terrible that I'm at least going to be able to laugh some. And there are moments like that throughout this film. Dakota Johnson especially, who, it's incredibly unfortunate. Dakota Johnson is a fantastic actress. I think she's incredibly talented. Suspiria 2018 is one of my favorite horror movies ever made. I loved her in Cha Cha Real Smooth and The Lost Daughter. I think she's a very talented actress, but she is just giving the worst performance of her career in this movie. It is like, it honestly felt like she'd never acted before, and that is horrible because she is incredible. And even someone like Sydney Sweeney, who is really becoming a powerhouse in the industry for the movies that she's making, her performance is laughably bad, just horrible. Both the other two girls in this also are not good. Adam Scott from Parks and Rec is in this movie, and he is awful in it as well. Like, everyone who shows up in this movie just feels like they don't care. Like, the way the dialogue is delivered and their interactions feel so unnatural and really just lazy in the worst way possible. The villain is one of the most underwritten and uninteresting villains in the whole Marvel universe, including Sony. His motivations are relatively uninteresting. He's not threatening at all. And every time he'd come on screen, I was just so unconcerned with whatever he was doing. I know a lot of people were incredibly upset because in the trailer you saw Sydney Sweeney and all of them in like Spider-Women costumes, and that's like a flashback sequence for 5 minutes. There's like no costumed fighting in this movie outside of the villain being in a Spider-Man costume. The fight sequences are shot in such a flat and uninteresting way that there's no suspense in the violence or anything that really keeps you hooked to the screen. And like I said, there are some so bad it's good moments that I found myself laughing so hard I was crying. But there's so much bland exposition in between that most of this hour and 55-minute runtime, somewhere in that range, is so incredibly boring. It's impossible for it to be a so bad it's good movie for the consistency of the runtime. It's just bad. I honestly, as someone who went to school for film production and who understands how film works, I have no idea how this movie made it off the editing room floor. It is like, when it ended, I could not believe that it was a movie that I watched. I really, like, honestly, I could not believe that it was a movie that editors worked on and sound designers worked on, and that a director was like, we've got the green light, send this to theaters. Like, it is that bad. It feels like something you would find in like a Dollar General dollar bin that you would put in and be like, there's no way human beings made this. Like, even in the conversational dialogue, there's a lot of moments that people are quoting in their Letterboxd reviews that are bafflingly bad lines of dialogue. And like I said, it's very easy to poke fun at this movie because it is absolutely horrible. But it's more interesting to think about the fact that studios are funneling this much money into products like this that just don't matter. And I see so many incredible independent filmmakers work with half to a quarter of this budget, if even less, and make movies that are twice the quality. And it's just really unfortunate that somehow Sony is still getting money to put out this garbage. And I saw Sydney Sweeney in an interview recently about building a relationship with Sony so she could, I think it was To Make Anyone But You, which she's producing a lot of her own movies. And she knows how to work her way through the industry. She's making the right decision. She made this stinker so she could make a bunch of movies that she wanted to make. And shout out to her, because Hollywood is a difficult industry, and I think she's navigating her way around in the right way. I'm really looking forward to watching Immaculate. I think it's cool. She seems to be a true film lover that wants to make really great movies, and shout out to her for doing that. But this was a miserable experience, and it was really upsetting to see so many incredible actors that I really like make something so terrible. And there's no reason to watch this at all. Just, you've probably already seen it, but if you haven't, don't. It's just a complete waste of time. So have you seen Madam Web? Did you love it? Did you hate it? Leave me a comment down below. Let me know what you thought. I thought this movie was terrible. Honestly, I have nothing else to say. Just a miserable experience that I hope to forget very soon. As always, if you like the video and subscribe to the channel, helps me out a lot and lets me know the type of content you're looking for. I'm always putting out new material and look forward to getting more out for you in the near future. And as always, everyone, thank you so much for watching and have a great rest of your day.